What's up, everyone? Today on the Denver Sports Podcast, we are talking Denver Broncos, continuing our playoff coverage here, and we're making a little comparison as we look back to the last time the Broncos were in the playoffs, talk about how this season compares to previous playoff seasons for the Broncos. That's all coming up next on the Denver Sports Podcast. The vibes are great here in the studio. It is a beautiful, snowy Tuesday morning, and we are continuing our coverage of the Broncos playoff push. I'm Christian Saez, Hank on my left, Jake on my right. What a day. What a week here for the Denver Broncos. I know you guys, specifically with the DNVR Broncos, are doing extended coverage throughout the whole week, but we figured we'd jump in on the conversation because it's just a good week to be a Broncos fan. And I gotta say, if you go back to the beginning of the year, and it's part of what we're going to talk about as the show goes on, but you go back to the beginning of the year, first two games of the season, we're talking about the vibes and, how things were feeling. It felt so different than how it feels today. And getting to look ahead towards Sunday, a playoff game in our future, just what a week for the Denver Broncos and Colorado.
What a time to be alive. We're back.
What a time to be alive. I know, and I'm glad to have you on the show, man.
Absolutely. It's about time.
I know.
That as well.
You've been kind of busy with another good football team in the state of Colorado.
But I always got to make time for the Broncos and for the TDSP. You know how it is.
I've seen some of your posts, maybe not through your account on social media, but through others like Alyssa and company, of your experiences at the Denver Broncos games this year. You seem like you've made the most of your season.
We had a lot of fun. I did go to the Chargers game here, though, which was really sad because Pat was out on the second play, and then it was just bad. That was a low vibes game. That was bad. But I did go to the Browns game at the time of my life.
And the vibes were high.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
That was a good one. That was a good one. I mean, this season feels like it's been such a roller coaster for Broncos fans, players, coaches, like just everyone, because of, again, how it started. If you go back to when things started, first two games of the year, and it just, you're trying to kind of understand what the season was going to look like. Bo Nix just kind of looked like a rookie quarterback, which, we were all kind of expecting, but it was this fear of like, is this what the rest of the season's going to be? And I think a lot of us had this hope of like, okay, we just want to have a season that we can build off of so that, no one's expecting to go to playoffs, but a season we can build off of so that next year we can potentially be that playoff team. So obviously things progressed in a way that went beyond that. But today I want to start the show by comparing how this season has looked in comparison to 2015, the last time the Broncos were in the playoffs, and also the years before that. Now, out of full transparency, I moved to Colorado in 2015. So 2015 was my entrance into the Denver Broncos and Colorado sports as a whole. You guys had, a little bit deeper of experience throughout that whole run for the Broncos, the Super Bowl playoffs, all of that. So I'll start with you, Hank. Since you cover this team specifically, how do you feel like this year for the Broncos has been in comparison to when you witnessed the Broncos' historic run in 2015 as a Broncos fan?
The big thing is just that defense. And like the Broncos defense this year is obviously really good. It's one of the 3 or 4 best in the NFL, and most sacks in the league, more sacks than they had in 2015. Like there's a whole bunch of great things they get to hang their hat on. But that 2015 defense is maybe the best defense of all time. And if not, you can look at the Seahawks had that Legion of Boom, and then the Bears, the 85 Bears. Those are the three. And it was just every week that they were making plays that won them games. Started 7-0. So you're just win. And remember, at this point, you're expecting to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because it's been 3 years of Payton Manning not able to win a Super Bowl. You get to the one. Then Payton gets hurt. Offense hadn't been going great. Brock Osweiler, who I shouldn't tease too much. Brock Osweiler, he comes in, plays well, and so you kind of hit that rocky stretch where they close it out with Payton at the end of the year, and then hit the revenge tour, beat the Steelers, who they'd lost to, beat the Patriots, who I guess they actually did beat, so it wasn't full revenge tour, and then Panthers in the Super Bowl. Like, you just saw a defense that couldn't be beaten by anybody, and if the offense just did enough, and typically with Payton in there, that was the difference. Like, Brock put up the better numbers. Payton knew which plays to run. He'd get CJ Anderson running the right way, get the blocker set, and that was enough because the defense was just that good.
Yeah, I feel like the expectations were entirely different in 2015 than they are this year. Like I said, this year it was like you're playing with house money. Like you're just having fun, right? Like anything that's positive is a bonus, and you're hoping to build off of that. In 2015, it was this expectation like we need to be a Super Bowl team, and that is the expectation. So this year, it feels like the pressure's not there. And I guess the vibes that I have going into this game in Buffalo is like, you know, if I'm asking who the pressure's on between the Bills and the Broncos, it's the Bills. Because the Broncos, if you even make it a game, even if you lose, you still win in the overall grand scheme of things. You know, I mean, that's the way it is because of the situation. And so it's different in just the expectations.
The expectations for 2015 started in like 2012, though. I mean, the terrible loss to the Ravens, then the terrible, even worse loss in the Super Bowl the year after, and then a really bad playoff loss to the Colts. It was like this mounting frustration and like just literally watching the window kind of close like as every year went. And so 2015, it was all or nothing. And it was a lot of vets on that team too. I mean, I remember they signed Evan Mathis like late in the offseason that year. Like they traded for Vernon Davis, I think too. Like they put a lot of these vets together. Whereas this team this year, you look back at the previous two seasons and this is unbelievable.
It's bet free. There are no bets.
I mean, you probably know better than anyone.
Yeah.
Well, and I heard someone, I don't remember who said it. Someone yesterday, one of the other Broncos media members called the Broncos, the island of misfit toys, because it's just like it's a team full of just kind of random no-name guys outside of your couple like Pat Surtain and obviously Bo Nix, but like. Everyone else is just kind of a hodgepodge of guys. Go outside of Denver and you start asking Bills fans, name me 5 guys on our defensive front. Like no one's gonna know any names, And so like that's I think what makes it even more special this year is that it's just this unique, unexpected bonus that we get. We get to play. We get to have playoff football in Denver in a year that no one expected to have playoff football. And so the vibes are as high as they could possibly get. And now we get to have the conversation of what if the Broncos go into Buffalo and get a win? Like what if? Like how insane is that going to be? I just cannot I can't fathom having this same conversation when we started off this year 0-2 and we were looking at some of the passes that Bo Nix was making and we were sitting there thinking to ourselves like, man, is this going to be another year of the kind of boring football, field goal type football that we've seen for years from the Broncos? And the fact that we don't have to have the conversation about quarterbacks anymore and all of these boxes are checked is just like a weight off of our shoulders.
I think that's why it makes this year so much exciting is because it's the first year of Bo Nix in a rookie contract, which obviously is you have the dead cap and all that stuff, but the rookie contract is the easiest way to win in the NFL when you have a quarterback under that. And as you said, you can call it Island of Misfit Toys or whatever. it's a gritty group who just came together and are playing good football. This team's going to get a lot better in the next 2-3 years. Sean Payton's got his guy. He knows what to build around him now. And I just think that this is truly the beginning of this era of Broncos football.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, it all comes down to the rookie contract. Realistically, the Broncos championship window ends in 2028. That's when the window's over. And the fact that it's opening right now is awesome because you get that bonus year at the front. There are a couple exceptions to that, like Patrick Mahomes. He was able to get those massive contracts and still go win Super Bowls. Tom Brady, he was able to get massive contracts, go win Super Bowls. That's the entire list. Like those are the only exceptions to the rookie quarterback rule because you look around the others, like Matt Stafford won one. Well, he was not the highly paid quarterback at that point. He had they restructured the money in whatever way with the Lions and all that sort of stuff. You just don't see teams extend that window unless they have a generational quarterback. And what the hope is that Bo Nix is one of those. And that's the only path for that window to extend. You'll find out this year, though, because with Patrick Mahomes, I mean, what happened right when he got on the field? Went and won a Super Bowl.
Yep.
What happened when Tom Brady got on the field? Went and won a Super Bowl. Like, to me, this is kind of the big test here. Like, do you actually have one of these guys? Again, like, just because that's how they did it doesn't mean it's a guarantee it's the only way, but this is kind of the big one. It's see what Bo can do. Can he go out duel Josh Allen, then Patrick Mahomes, then Lamar Jackson? And if he can do it, then all of a sudden, you get a decade of great football in Denver, which would be awesome.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting. I saw one of the Toyota chats from Jose, who said the highest vibes he can remember: 1998, 2005, 2011, 2013. The point I want to make based off of that is that I think a lot of people forget, because of the playoff drought, because of just how tumultuous these last few years have been for the Broncos. The Broncos have a history as a franchise of being a winning football team. This is not like, unfortunately, our Colorado Rockies, where it's like, we're holding on to the 2007 World Series and that's it. Like the Broncos,
to be clear.
We're the Broncos are different. Like this is a team that's won for decades. And so people forget about that. And Bo Nix, Sean Payton and company have put the Broncos back on the map. And they've done it in such an unorthodox way in Bo Nix's rookie year with an island of misfit toys with a bunch of no-name guys that, have learned to play around each other and remind the national media, the national world, the national, fan base that the Broncos are a legit franchise that cares about winning, that wants to be successful, and now has the pieces that, like you said, can enter into a championship window. You just can't help but smile.
Yeah, I mean, that's just smart team building across the board. Like, I think it's really easy to kind of reduce things down to numbers and say you have this much money to spend here, this much money. The key is hitting on those guys, though.
Yep.
It makes sense to move on from Justin Simmons, who's making what would have been $17 million this year, I think, and instead give $8 million to Brandon Jones. Financially makes a lot of sense. But because George Payton, the general manager, is a genius, Brandon Jones turns out to be even better at football than Justin Simmons was.
Yeah.
And they've hit on that. The other safety spot with PJ Locke, nobody knew who that was. He was one of the names when, you go through the offseason, PFF is saying like 31st roster in the NFL. He was one of the names they circled. Said, who even is PJ Locke? Nobody knows who this is. Broncos saw enough in his 5 starts maybe last year when Kareem Jackson was out to say, this guy knows how to play football. Put him in there, and he's another really good safety that you got for super cheap. And they've just done that across the roster. You find it with Riley Moss and Jaquan, Cody Barton. The defensive line they paid a little bit more to, but you look across the roster and there's finding guys like that, and that's how you build a football team.
But you felt like you were rebuilding coming into this year. I mean, anytime you get a new quarterback, you feel like you're in this like rebuilding phase. And we all kind of went into this year feeling like this is a rebuilding year, right? Like we're not going to make the playoffs this year. We're hoping that in the next couple of years we can be competitive and making steps forward. And I think, Sean Payton, George Payton and company all said, no, like this isn't a rebuilding. You're like, yeah, we have to build some things, but like we're going to be competitive this year. And to have that vision, that sight, to be able to see through all the noise, through all the $90 million in dead cap space, and to be able to keep eyes on the prize, really, like that to me speaks volumes.
It started last year. I mean, you can say what you want about the situation from Sean Payton and Russell Wilson and all that, but they were a competitive team down the stretch. I mean, against Buffalo, that Monday night game, I mean, they went in there and upset them.
Yep.
They showed flashes of this last year, and this was something, why the 5.5 win total coming into the year? That's why it made no sense to me, because you got rid of Russell Wilson, who I think everyone kind of, marked as the quote unquote problem last season. You bring in this rookie quarterback and you kind of just reset the clock on that. The dead cap and all that stuff is what it is, but it's a much younger football team that this origin started last year though. And that's just kind of bled through into this season. And back to Jose's comment, I mean, it is kind of like 2011 vibes, I think for me, because that team was, that was just magical. A lot of it still doesn't make sense how they won games that year, but it was kind of just a bunch of guys who just bought in, and just went to work down in, down out, and ended up winning a lot of games that a lot of people didn't think they would.
Yeah, well, Elvis in the Toyota chat says Sean Payton is coach of the year, and he's got a pretty good argument there. I do want to, since this is the Denver Sports Podcast, we tend to take more of an umbrella approach to our sports takes here. I want to give out some regular season awards when we come back from this break. Talk a little bit about some of the specifics that we saw from this past year from the Broncos. But before we do, got to give a shout out to our friends real fast, starting with our friends over at Coors Light. Look, it's the middle of winter. I get it. It's cold outside. But that doesn't mean that it's still not a good time to go enjoy yourself a nice, cold, refreshing Coors Light. And Coors Light, if you're not, going out camping and doing all the things that I like to do in the summer where I enjoy Coors Light, the things that I do in the winter to enjoy a Coors Light is like go to the DNVR sports bar and watch party and watch the Broncos take on the Bills and pair it with some nice Coors Lights. I mean, it goes well really no matter what time of year it is. I'm going to be here at the DNVR bar on Sunday, hanging out, watching some Broncos football and enjoying a nice, cold, refreshing Coors Light. There's nothing better than some football, Coors Light, and good vibes. So we're going to be riding those vibes all week long as we get ready for this Broncos playoff game here on Sunday. So make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instant Cart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, based in Golden, Colorado. Also got to give a shout out to our friends over at Bet365 because we don't do ordinary, and every single sport should be epic right now. Now, look, I'm a little superstitious when it comes to betting, especially when you're betting on your team around the playoffs. So I'm not going to be betting on the Broncos through this playoff. I'm not. I got to be hands off on this.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
It makes me nervous.
Appreciate your sacrifice.
I know. I'm going to take one for the team on this. But there are plenty of other good sports and good games, whether it's around the NFL, football, basketball, tons of hockey, whatever you're into, sports betting wise. And Bet365, they've got you covered. Use code DNVR365 when you sign up. Deposit $10. Choose between either a bet and get offer by placing a bet of $5 or more and getting $150 in bonus bets, or the first bet safety net offer by placing a bet of up to $1,000. And if your qualifying bet loses, you receive a matched refund in bonus bets. Are you guys going to be betting on this upcoming Broncos? Yeah,
absolutely. I haven't figured out how. 8.5.
I'm taking the money line.
Plus 340.
Yeah, that's fair. If I was in on it, I would.
Because like the nerds say Broncos have like a 30%, a little better than 30% chance, but the odds say it's more like 20 to 25.
30% is wild to me. Like that's
the Bills. I don't think they're that good.
I get it, but they're in games. Buffalo. Like
definitely.
Vegas always gives the odds to the home team, especially in that case. But 30, I'll take 30%. I'll take 30%. Okay. That's not. I mean,
it's not bad.
It's not bad. Could be worse. It could be worse. So yeah, if you're going to be betting on the Broncos this weekend, got to get involved with our buddies over at Bet365. Again, use that code DNVR365 when you sign up and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, back here on the Denver Sports Podcast, Christian Saez, Hank, Jake, we're hanging out here talking Broncos football, getting ready for your Sunday playoff in Buffalo. And I want to give out a little regular season awards. I want to talk a little bit about this past regular season as we kind of wrap up everything. Because as I said on during our last segment, this is a roller coaster of a regular season for the Broncos. And I got to say, there were some good days, there were some bad days. There were days where Bo Nix looked like a rookie, and there were days that Bo Nix looked like the rookie of the year. That was the ride throughout the whole season. So I want to start by just kind of going all encapsulating here. Aside from Bo Nix, because if I ask you guys who's the MVP of this year, it's going to be Bo Nix, right? Aside from Bo Nix, though, and you're shaking your head, so I'll start with you.
Yeah.
Aside from Bo Nix, who's your MVP of the regular season for the Broncos?
It's Pat. We had the Denver, what do they even call that? The Football Writers Association in Denver gives out like the team MVP.
Okay.
And Pat won it this year, and he got my vote. And I think
understandable.
You just see the difference when he's not out there. Like he is he and Nick Bonito are the two pieces. I guess Zach Allen too. The three pieces who just overwhelm teams. Mm-hmm. Like those are the three guys that you just really have to account for if you're the offense. And that makes it a little bit easier on guys like PJ. It makes it easier for guys like Riley because you're drawing the second assignment. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think Pat has just led this defense to a ridiculous level. And Bo he made a great case for himself because we did our vote a few weeks ago, but I mean, he put up his best game of the season this week.
Yeah.
You know, first time over 320, the 4 touchdowns, no pick, runs for whatever else. Like he wound up right up there in the end.
Can we talk for a moment as well about, and then I want to let you answer this, but about because I'm hearing all this conversation around, well, you're playing the Chiefs B team, and they like obviously whatever the Chiefs rolled out there sucked. Okay, but the Broncos still had to show up and do what they did. Like you could have easily played down to your competition, and we've seen that happen plenty of times across the NFL as a whole. The Broncos showed up and played a group of professional athletes, still, whether it was the backups, B straight, whatever, still the best football players in the world, in the top, 5% of football players in the world. You're still playing a bunch of dudes out there that can ball. And you went out and had the best game of your career, of your season. So I want to give credit where credit's due. Yes, is that the same as playing Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? No, it's not. But is it still going out and performing at that elite level? Absolutely. And so give credit where credit's due. Bo Nix had a hell of a game and deserves his flowers after that game. And I agree with you. Bo Nix is, he deserves that credit.
Yeah.
MVP though for you, regular season. Yeah. Who do you think?
I mean, to go to your point though, just talking about playing the B team, they played the Chiefs earlier in the year, and they were literally in position to win.
Yeah,
in Arrowhead.
They should have won. Yes, absolutely.
So, anyways, I digress. It's got to be Pat, but I'll make a case for Nick Bonito. Denver, when they've been good, they've had these strong pass rushers who have the ability to take over games, and that's what he's delivered. I mean, 16 tackles for a loss, 13 and a half sacks. That's the type of stuff that they wanted and envisioned when they drafted him. So he has been able to change the defense just because they're able to get after the quarterback more consistently now. Yeah. He's someone you have to game plan for. Whereas, the last 8-7 years or 9 years, whatever it is, they haven't really had that guy. I know Nick had a good season last year, but after Vaughn and Chubb even left, it was just, where's the pass rush? So it just shows the value of pass rush, and it's how Broncos won the Super Bowl, the whole damn thing in 2015. It was the pass rush and the defensive line. So I'll give it to Nick Bonito.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. I mean, we just saw the Golden Globe Awards last night. You always hear about like
big Golden Globes guy.
I
didn't even hear. Me and here were in here yesterday because I think it was the night
so
before.
Intensely to that.
Wait, were they last night?
Or was it 2 nights ago?
Sunday
must
night.
have been.
Might
Must have been 2 nights ago.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know, but I was in here and it popped up. Watch the Golden Globes. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And apparently they were Sunday.
Apparently
nobody
that's still
told
a thing.
me.
Yeah,
I don't think I'd watch anyway, but
I'll every once in a while see like a clip pop up on social media and be like, oh, the Golden Globes are happening, and Kale will tweet about it every once in a while because he's.
I know that's why I did. I asked Kale. I was like, did this really happen? He's like, yeah, of course.
Big Golden Globes guy. That theater man that Kale is. Yeah, but they give out like best supporting actress, best supporting actor, like that kind of award. And I think if I'm going best supporting person, talking about the MVP, like Bowles to me had one of the seasons like that where Bo Nix doesn't have the year that he has, the MVP caliber year or Rookie of the Year caliber year that Bo Nix has, if it's not for a guy like Bowles protecting him, keeping him safe. Doing his job, and Bowles has been there from the beginning, protecting quarterbacks and going through all of this chaos around the quarterback situation for the Broncos. And I know, we're starting to give him his flowers a little bit more, as the year has gone on, but I think he still kind of flies under the radar a lot.
No, absolutely. And it was a conversation, we had a lot before the extension, happened was, do you kind of go along with the continuity, bring Bowles back, or do you use that money, try to go get another big time tackle? But the progression of his time at Denver has, one, it's like inspiring, but two, it's just amazing. Yeah. I mean, he was like a meme his first 3-4 years in Colorado.
Yep.
It was crazy. So to see him emerge just as this lockdown left tackle that really allowed Bo to flourish and do what Bo does best, run around, just make crazy plays. He's been invaluable to this team, and he's part of why they were so successful with a rookie quarterback.
I'm loving watching the comments just pouring in on all of the different takes on like who we think the MVP is, and it's different from each person. And I think that to me, it like when we were coming into the year, I remember listening to the radio, listening to different shows, and hearing the different takes coming into this Broncos season. And a lot of people were saying, yeah, look, there might be a couple. You Pat Surtain's really good. Bo Nix, he's a rookie, but like he might end up being really good. But like there just aren't a lot of pieces. Like this Broncos team just doesn't have the pieces. They don't have the depth to be a successful team, and that's why this is a building year. So to be able to get to the end of the regular season and say, you could make the argument that this player could be an MVP, and you could make the argument for each of these people. Like that is huge because none of us expected that. You were hoping that Bo Nix and your top one receiver, top one defensive back, and a couple linemen, and that's it. That was going to be your hope for the season of like the guys that were going to show out. And you had an all-encompassing offense and defensive team that came together and played as a whole. Credit to Sean Payton for putting that together.
He's a hell of a coach. I mean, damn man, he didn't win that often in New Orleans by accident. He's been doing this. He's coming from the Parcells tree. He's seen it all. So he has been a godsend for Denver. I mean, he kind of saved the franchise, honestly. I mean, they were floundering, between these coaching hires, and then he becomes available through the trade. So, and what he's done with this team, I think, shows just how good of a coach he is, because we've talked about it a lot in this show already. It's, I guess, a no-name bunch, but the potential to get better, and what he's done with Marvin Mims, who we haven't even talked about. Like,
oh my God.
Being able to flesh his game out. It just shows how valuable he is and how he's changed this franchise.
Yeah, they just hit on, like I said, so many of the spots. They hit on those safeties that really could have been the worst group in the league. On paper, they probably were. Corners with Riley, the linebackers, like all those guys they hit on, they just didn't find a running back or a tight end. And in the end, that probably will be their downfall. Like it's just so hard to not be able to run the football at all this time of year. And you look at some of the best teams and they're able to just throw their way through the playoffs. But that's what you're asking Bo to do, because there's just nobody who you can trust to give the ball to at this point. So it is just crazy to me that you were able to hit on all those spots. But running back, which is supposed to be so easy to find,
I know
you just couldn't find somebody.
I know.
There's nobody.
And it's just such a weird position. A position that's evolving, too, across the NFL, the value of the running back and what that means, how much these guys are getting paid, contracts, all of that kind of stuff. It's changing so quickly. And the Broncos have said, you know what, we can figure it out with what we've got. And that's kind of what they've made their mark with. I think it's interesting because you got to cover CU throughout the year, and I've made comparisons on this show between the Broncos and CU before, and now that I have you on the show, I want to kind of see how you kind of compare the two, because I think there was very similar, in a way, expectations going into the year. We just don't really know what to expect. Yeah. There's a couple good guys on each team, right? You've got Shedeur, Travis on CU that you're expecting to be really good, and plus a couple other guys, but overall, it's like there was still that question mark of like, can they compete? Can they make it to a bowl game? Can they get a winning season? And all of the pieces kind of came together throughout a long season to make it work. And I feel like the Broncos show shades of that in the same way.
It's a combination of coaching, which we already kind of talked about, but also just belief and coming together as a team.
Belief. I like that.
I mean, that's really where it starts. I mean, no one gave CU a chance. No one gave Denver a chance coming into this season. But it didn't matter to the guys in the locker room. They all bought in. They bought into the coach. They bought into the system. And they both have great leaders as their coaches, too. So it shows the value of not only coaching, but leadership. Just having someone to, direct the ship, direct the sails, and make sure that you block out the outside noise, because there's a lot for both teams. There's a lot of disrespect for both teams, too.
Absolutely.
So just being able to, I guess, feed off of that, or and maybe in another way, just not let that affect you. Yeah. And just keep on going day-to-day business. I think that's really the biggest similarity between these two.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think for me stands out the most between the season that CU had and the season that the Broncos have had is that, sometimes it was good, sometimes it was bad, but it was always worth watching, right? And I'm not a CU guy. I didn't go to CU. I don't have direct ties to CU. I'm watching Shirley just as a football fan, and it was worth watching to me. The Denver Broncos, and I'm definitely a fan of the Broncos, so like I can speak for that specifically. But like the Broncos season, even if you weren't a fan, like was worth watching because you had this excitement of like, what's this rookie quarterback going to do? What's he capable of? Sometimes he didn't meet the mark, right? Sometimes he reminded us that he's still a rookie. But it was always worth watching, and you learned something from him and about him every single game that he played. And so now, as we get ready for this Buffalo game, the NFL has showed, they sent their top crew, Jim Nantz and Tony Romo's for CBS, to cover this game. They put a game that, the Chiefs are throwing their B-string guys out there. Like, the Broncos are now must-watch football if you care and love the NFL and love football. And so to have that back in the city of Denver is huge. It's huge.
Kind of the power of the brand too. I mean, what you kind of led the show off with. I mean, this is a proud, winning franchise who has just been on hard times. And I think that's, kind of why Nance and Romo came out. I mean, you see the Broncos playing meaningful football in December, January, there's going to be people tuning in everywhere because it means something to so many people.
And people are going to say, "Oh, well, it's because they were playing the Chiefs." And like, I disagree. I think it's because
everyone knew the Chiefs wasn't playing Mahomes or any of these guys.
And it doesn't matter. And the Chiefs are what they are, right? Like, we hope that the Broncos match up with the Chiefs again this year. I mean, in best case scenario, but for what it is, the Broncos were able to finish strong. And to wrap up this segment, we did our New Year's resolutions on our last TDSP, or maybe 2 TDSPs ago. And my New Year's resolution for the Broncos was to finish strong. Now, it took a few games. It wasn't all smooth sailing at first, but man, did they finish strong, right? Like, man, did they put it forward on their last game of the year and finished about as strong as they could. So shout out to the Broncos for taking a little stress out of our hearts there on that last game, making sure they got it taken care of. After the break, though, I want to make an interesting comparison as well and kind of draw an interesting conversation about the difference between head coach Sean Payton and some of the front office and or coaching of the Cowboys, and a unique kind of dynamic that I saw pop up towards the end of the regular season. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we do, I want to give an update on some crazy events that we've got coming up right around the corner here at DNVR, and it all has to do with the Broncos. I'll say this, for the people who are hanging out in Denver, going to be here around the Denver area, we've got an incredible watch party. It's going to be January 12th, as you know, 9:30 to 4 o'clock p.m. here at the DNVR bar. It's going to be packed. You're going to want to show up early. You're going to want to get here with enough time to make sure you can get yourself a seat, a table, bring friends, whatever you need to do. I don't remember the last time the DNVR bar hosted like a really big playoff watch party. Obviously, we had the Nuggets and Avs. We've had that every year. But where it felt unique, like the Avs and Nuggets, we knew they were going to the playoffs. Like, it was big, but it didn't have the weight as it did when the Avs were in the Stanley Cup and when the Nuggets were in the championship. Like, those felt different. This feels different. The Broncos are in the playoffs again. We haven't had a Broncos playoff watch party since 2015. Were we even a thing in 2015? Was the DNVR bar even okay, it was.
Not the bar.
Not the bar.
Was not.
That's what I mean. Like, have we ever had a DNVR bar watch party?
Not for Bronco playoff game, no.
That's nuts. So be a part of history here at the DNVR bar if you're going to be hanging out in Denver, and be a part of the first DNVR Broncos watch party at the bar, 9:30 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. It's an all-day affair. I mean, it's just going to be incredible. If you are able to leave the Denver area, and maybe you can hop on a plane, maybe you just happen to land in Buffalo on January 12th, maybe it's before 10 a.m. We've got a Broncos tailgate happening at the Buffalo Bills Stadium. I know you guys were just talking about it. Something about drinking beer out of bowling balls.
Yeah, apparently that's what they do there.
Apparently that's a thing.
That's what Ryan said.
To knock your teeth out, before
well, you don't like game? Drop the whole thing.
Well, sure.
You want just the
it
liquid.
Feels slippery though. Like, it's cold and I don't know. So whatever you're into,
don't grease them up.
Yeah, we need a report from the tailgate. I need someone walking around out there just finding what's going on.
I'm not sure who's going. I think Zach and Nick are going.
Are you not going?
No, I'll be here.
Send Nick to do it then.
Yeah,
Nick will walk around with the camera.
Nick will do it.
Not to hijack this and make it about my beat, but if the Rockies ever like make it to a playoffs, I am already like imagining, like, am I gonna be here at the bar? Am I gonna be there? I don't know. I don't know what I want to do.
Yep.
That's tough. So I feel for you, man. I feel for you.
It'll be okay.
I'm sure you'll be fine.
I'll be very fine.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be fine. But yeah, if you want more information on our tailgate versus the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo, head to thednvr.com/events for more information. Ryan Green in the chat says they're taking shots of cherry liqueur out of a bowling ball. Yeah, maybe. You never know. Maybe that's what Zach Stevens is going to be doing. Wrapping up this break, got to give a shout out to our friends over at Empire Today. If you're in the market to get your floors replaced like we have here in this studio, across all markets, I've been told as well. Empire Today, they replace all of the floors here at DNVR, PHLY, PHNX, all of the other ALLCITY studios, which is incredible. Really cool. I did not know that. But just such a cool thing that they were able to do. And they all look great. I was actually at DLLS at their studios when I was doing the winter meetings and got to see just how cool their studio setup was. It's truly incredible. The quality, the service, the speed, everything that Empire Today does. I've said it before, you know, my wife and I were getting ready to move, you know, probably within the next year. We got to replace our floors. Empire Today has been awesome. We've worked with them. They have given us so many different options, so many different ways that we can go about this. I mean, you know, Marissa, you know how intense she is about like making sure things are up to code, up to standard, right?
Sure,
you know,
yeah.
so and they've been great. They've made her happy every which way. I've been hands off, right? I know it's hard. It's hard. Marissa's got high
W for you,
expectations.
bro.
W for me that I don't have to be the one to deal with that because Empire Today is doing the dirty work. They're getting their hands wet and making sure that we get the floor that Marissa wants us to have. And one of the cool things about Empire Today, they use the virtual floor designer. You can take a picture of your living space. You get to see what that floor is going to look like there. So you get the right style, the right color, whatever you're into. They have you covered. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners of the show can receive a $350 off discount when you use promo code DNVR. Restrictions apply. See EmpireToday.com/DNVR for details. All right, back here on the Denver Sports Podcast. I wanted to bring this up because I thought this was interesting. I don't know if you guys saw this story coming out of Dallas. Cowboys benching Cooper Rush, you know, for Trey Lance with $500,000 incentive on the line. There was all that controversy. I think Jerry Jones went out and like kind of addressed it and said that it had nothing to do with the money. Mm-hmm. We were just benching him for other reasons, whatever. When I was watching the Broncos game, because I watched it, at home on TV, so I heard all of the commentary, and I think it was Tracy Wolfson who was there as the reporter.
I don't know
on CBS. I think it was Tracy who was the reporter on CBS with Jim Nantz and Tony Romo.
She's A-team, yeah.
Yeah, she is. Okay. She is A-team.
It's got to be.
And she was like in one of the huddles where Sean Payton was talking to Courtland Sutton and. And when she, like, during the game comes on and is like, I just heard Sean Payton literally scheming with Bo Nix and Courtland Sutton, trying to find a way to make sure that Courtland Sutton is going to get his incentives and his bonuses. And it hit me because I'm like, this is a game where at that time when that was happening, I think they were up by 2 touchdowns. So you're feeling good, but you're still playing a game that it is win and get to the playoffs for the first time since 2015 or lose. And, you know, there's a whole different conversation there. And
that'd be dark.
Sean Payton is sitting there saying, I want to make sure this guy gets paid. Like, we need to make sure Courtland Sutton gets his incentives. I know it's a small, minor piece of this. I get that it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. But how nice is it to have a coach that cares about his players like that, in that way, to say, like, look, this really has nothing to do with us getting to the playoffs. I just want to make sure you get paid, dude. Like, get your incentive, man. And he did it.
What was the Cooper? He just had to start Cooper Rush?
Cooper Rush had to start one more game, and he would have gotten the $500,000 contract incentive.
That's crazy. They could have just put him in for the first play of the game, handed off the ball, and
That's what Josh Allen did.
Yep.
Kept his starting streak alive.
Unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I mean that's just a bad organization from top to bottom.
It's a bad look.
It's typical Cowboys. That's typical Cowboys. You know, they just blow so much money on stupid things, and then they can't afford the things that are actually important, and then they lose their good offensive lineman because it's like, oh, it's an offensive lineman. He's not fast, so what is he worth? No, and it just trickles down. It's a stupid franchise who does stupid things. The Broncos are smart, which is nice.
Yeah, I just love that. I'm like, that's great. I mean, you love, and I think that's one of the things, you know, the Broncos coaching has been another question mark for years since. Yeah, for however long they've been trying to figure out their coaching staff. Vance Joseph, I mean, I don't know if you guys heard Tony Romo and Jim Nantz talking about that a lot throughout the broadcast about, you know, Vance Joseph and the humility it takes to come back to a place in which he was already the head coach and say, you know what, I'm going to take a job as a defensive coordinator and not be the head honcho, but still be a part of this franchise. And kind of betting a lot on it too. I mean, you know, he didn't know that the Broncos were going to be a playoff team. I mean, you know, he probably would have said he did, but you don't have that guarantee. You're just hoping. You're putting your best foot forward and hoping that the things work out in your favor. And Vance Joseph bet on himself, and now it looks like he's getting offers from the Jets to be a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, things are changing.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm curious if that works out for him because black coaches rarely get second opportunities. The people have really studied it, and that just. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, you coached for Sean McVay once or Mike Shanahan once. It's like, oh, it didn't work out the first time. We'll give you opportunity after opportunity after opportunity.
Yeah, it's a revolving door.
Yeah, so we'll see. Hopefully he does get an opportunity. If they make a run, I think he might. But that's probably what it's going to take for him to actually get a job. But I guess it depends a little bit. Like the Jets, we talk about the Cowboys being a terrible, terrible organization. The Jets are the exact same way, potentially even worse, probably even worse.
I think worse.
And so if you wind up with 3 people passing on the job, does Vance also pass on it, or does he think that, hey, here's my opportunity, like I should take it? So,
you know what I just thought about, speaking of the Jets? Can you imagine, because I know when we got Russell Wilson, there was this whole conversation of like, are they going to go for Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson? Can you imagine if the Broncos had gotten Aaron Rodgers? Because I think Aaron Rodgers wouldn't have been bad enough like Russell Wilson was to immediately cut him. Right. I think they would have held on to him probably longer than they should have. And then it would have been this situation of like, now we're kind of like in this limbo. Like at least they were able to move on from Russell Wilson, say it's not working out. Let's just cut our ties and just start from the ground up. I think if they had gotten Aaron Rodgers, like you would have been kind of just, it would have been just right in the middle.
It would have been interesting. Because the thing is, he would have been with Hackett. Because Russ with Hackett, terrible. Like one of the worst in the NFL. I forgot about Hackett. Russ with Sean Payton, he was pretty good. Like by the numbers,
he was fine.
Rate-wise, he was better than Bo Nix was.
He was fine. Yeah, I don't know, pretty good, but he was fine.
If you go pure stats, you say like better yards per attempt, better completion percentage, better passer rating, better touchdown interception, all that, better than Bo Nix. And what Bo has on him is just the volume.
Yeah.
So you throw in another 20 yards a game. How does that kind of weight against the efficiency of the rest? So, with Rodgers, you would have had him with Hackett, and the question would have been, if because they'd worked together, would it have gone better in that first year? Could he have gotten off to a real start instead of kind of settling in the middle eventually?
Would he have torn his Achilles on day one?
But that's the other thing is that it would have been the year before.
Yeah.
And so you would have had...
True.
So who knows if that was just going to blow at that point anyway?
I don't know. It's a lot of what ifs.
There's a whole bunch of what ifs.
You could go down the rabbit hole.
Sean Payton probably never ends up here. And there's probably a lot of other coaches and players who get shipped off because Aaron Rodgers just doesn't want him here. So him battling with the ownership group would have been fascinating too. So there's a lot that would have been... You truly can't look back and even try to comprehend what would have happened.
It just makes you grateful. It makes you grateful. You know, it's always that grass is always greener. And I'm like, okay, let's recognize that we're in the green grass right now. Like we're feeling good. You know, you look across to your neighbor's lawn over in New York, and you say, their grass looks pretty crappy, man. Like that. I would hate to be that. I would hate to be mowing that lawn. You know, and so. The Broncos, like they've got it figured out. Speaking of grass, by the way, that was the sickest field I've ever seen from the Broncos.
Oh man!
And with the jerseys, nice. There was a shot. They had like a field camera shot with like the nice DSLR cameras, nice lenses or whatever. Like after the first touchdown, and it had this like lens flare. I'm getting all nerdy here, but like it had this like lens flare of like the sun popping out behind like the silhouetted orange and blue. And I just looked at that and I'm like. Like, if I took a screenshot of that, I would frame that picture and put it in my office.
I don't know if it's the Colorado sun, but the Broncos field just looks better than anyone's field.
Yeah,
it does. Even because it's a new TV, field. Yeah. But I swear, I mean, on TV, the shots, like, you can just tell, if they're on the 42-yard line or something, midfield, maybe even less than midfield. You can't see logos. You can tell where or when you're watching a Mile High game compared to anyone else, just because of the way
it almost looks turf. It almost looks turf,
almost,
but like with grass.
Ball Arena has that too. Like if you watch a Nuggets game and then just go watch like a Hawks game or something, you're just like, well, this looks terrible.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is about the lighting inside the arena. And obviously, Rockies have the same sun thing.
Yeah, that's all the Rockies have. We got a great stadium. I mean, the Coors Field is.
I don't watch enough random baseball. I guess like the domes get kind of dingy. That's all that really stands out.
Oh, I've talked with PHNX, with our guys at PHNX who cover the Diamondbacks about like just them playing in Arizona in their little dome, and I'm like, it just ugly.
Looks sad.
It just sucks.
I can't imagine going and sitting there for 3 hours.
No,
you could just be outside where it's nice.
So I follow the guy on I think it's Twitter, who like the field operations manager, the guy who does the groundskeeper. Okay. And I'll have to figure out who this guy is and like show you, because he posts like pictures of the field when he's prepping it for the game, and but they have these like LED lights that they're like grow lights, but they go across the whole field.
They're pretty crazy.
That's insane to me. First of all, how expensive is that? And we know Greg Penner puts a lot of money in making sure his field is up to par and making sure everything looks good. But like it's literally just like this massive size grow light that they just roll across the field to make sure everything looks good. And on top of that, you get, 300 days of sun, and, the conditions are pretty good. But it's wild that, my lawn outside of my house is brown and dead. And then you go watch a Broncos game and you're like, that is
the
how
most
the
beautiful
real grass
grass of all time.
crazy. Like,
It
what are
is
you in
crazy.
Florida? Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, typically it's like everything clears off the field over the course of like 30 minutes or whatever. And then like an hour after the game, that's when all the players meet their families on the field.
Yeah.
And so then they're all out there for like 45 minutes. But then as soon as they clear out, that's when they bring the light out. And so typically I'm writing just watching the big old light out there.
Yeah.
Because it's as soon as they can start rehabbing the field for the next week, they get after it.
Yeah, that is funny. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Do you ever stay late for like CU games? Like, do you ever like stay late writing, or do you kind of dip out pretty early?
You guys have a show.
We do the
too.
show from
Yeah.
there, so we're always able to kind of like poke out from the Champion Center after it's like empty and it's like still kind of game day like setting. And even the last game, who they play? Oklahoma State. It was like, or was it Utah? It was a late game. I can't remember when it was. It was like snowy when you went out there. And
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
cool. It's a good vibe, man. I know.
Yeah.
Walking out of Coors Field, like when the lights are down, there's just like one light on.
Yeah.
You get the stadium people out there like cleaning up a little bit. It is a nice vibe.
Yeah,
It is
I was the last one out for one game this year. Typically, there's a few of us who are there until about the end of Sunday Night Football is typically when I get done working.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of nice when you just have the entire stadium. Or like,
it's a late grind,
actually,
man.
the last game, the elevator didn't work. And so I had to go to a different elevator. But the different elevator, you have to go down to like the field level to get out.
You slept
and so
in
I got
Power
like
Field.
I got like a
Stayed
whole
the night.
little like lap with nobody underneath the stadium, which is kind of fun.
It is. That's weird. It feels like
it's
trippy.
weird.
You're looking at it like this stadium's just empty, and I'm just still here walking
Yeah.
around. Yeah, it is weird. Speaking of ownership, though, we got to take our last break. But after the break, I want to talk a little bit about Broncos ownership and just the dynamic that shifted and that Greg Penner and company have kind of brought to the Denver Broncos and how that's helped them get to where they are today. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Going to pause for a second. Back with more after this. All right, back here on the Denver Sports Podcast. Christian Saez, Hank, Jake, Yaya sitting in the booth, pushing buttons, hanging out with us, staying warm, enjoying these vibes on this.
Hands are cold.
It's cold in here, man. It is cold in here. The Broncos are back in the playoffs, and it's snowing again for like the first time in forever in Denver. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. It's not. I mean, you Ubered to work here, which is insane to me.
I had to, man.
That's
I don't think the Civic would have handled today very well.
yeah, probably not. Probably not.
Yourself a Toyota, baby.
I know.
I
Get on the
know.
Toyota, yeah.
Toyota,
the Yoda
yeah.
Toyota.
Toyota
Yeah.
ain't hard to find.
Toyota, hook it up.
Hook it up, man. I know. Get Jake a real car that he can, drive to work with, because it's tough. The roads are dicey out there. Stay safe out there, people. Hope you guys are hanging out with us and enjoying some Broncos talk. I wanted to talk a little bit about, one of the things I noticed after the game that I thought was really unique and special to the Denver Broncos. I know some other owners are like this too, but I don't know if you guys saw, Greg Penner went into the locker room and gave a speech post-game. And I just thought to myself, like, that's so unique. Like, I just, I don't want to make too big of a deal out of it. But again, I cover the Colorado Rockies. So ownership is different. The dynamic is very different, in the team that I cover than the Denver Broncos. So when I see something like that, it stands out to me, and I want to acknowledge just how much the culture has shifted when you have an ownership group that puts so much effort and energy into putting a winning product out on the field, and it starts from the top down, GM, coaches, and then players. And there was that limbo where, they had the whole ownership kind of financial situation, and we didn't really know what was happening with the Broncos ownership. And now the Penners have kind of ease the waters, everything's calm again, and you can see the on-field results are following in that footsteps, and that's cool to see.
I mean, I'm glad you brought this up because I think it's one of the biggest reasons why the Broncos are back in the playoffs is the fact that you have stability at ownership. Look at Dallas, who we just talked about. I mean, they've had Jerry for forever, but he's so involved in everything and so hands-on. When you have an ownership, look at Washington back in the playoffs this year too. Like when you have these groups come in who are just able to really, stay involved like the Penners are, of course. I mean, we just talked about the field and all that, but also hands-on in a way to let the football people do football things. That's when you get back to the playoffs and you have winning seasons and you change the culture. So They've been a godsend, and it's part of the reason why they're back. The Broncos are back where they belong.
Yeah, they're doing a good job picking and choosing their spots because there's like you need them to do something,
you need them to throw money at problems.
Exactly. They build your entire foundation. They are what you're built off of. But then obviously you don't want them to do too much unless they're really, really good, in which case you can do a little bit more.
But look,
Jerry Jones was 40 years ago.
I was about to say,
eventually he fades off and you're just like, well, Jerry Jones should fire Jerry Jones, but that obviously won't happen. Yeah. I think they've done a great job. And I think typically they're down there shaking hands with everybody after wins as they get into the locker room, but the speeches are rare. But yeah, you just pick and choose your moments, and that's a big moment. That's one where something needed to be said. And again, why does Dick Monfort not do that? They don't have a lot of moments. Like,
they don't
on a random Thursday going down there to say, "Hey, good job, you avoided the sweep from the Dodgers." Like, let me give a little speech. This means a lot.
One.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is 3-1.
Man, I know. Hey, I'm speaking of that. The Rockies now hold the longest playoff drought record, and not record, but longest playoff drought currently.
That is crazy
in Colorado. Not going to the playoffs since 2018.
Not in baseball. Okay, in Colorado.
No, not in baseball. Thank God. But
yeah,
the Mariners, I think, hold that one. That's a little deeper, but
because Rockies were 18 and 19.
Yeah, they were 18.
The crazy thing
17, 18.
And they were so good.
Which wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't that long ago. They were really good, and it was so sustainable, and they just decided to blow it up.
Oh, totally. But it speaks to the Broncos. Like, the Broncos haven't been in the playoffs for 10 years, 9 years, And so, I mean, I remember I tweeted that out because on the DNVR Rockies Twitter, and I'm like, well, the Rockies now have the longest playoff drought out of Colorado sports. But you're like, okay, it wasn't that long ago. I think the bitterness for Rockies fans is just like you don't have a lot of winning before that to base yourself on. The Broncos, again, you look back at the history of the franchise. You go Google how many times were the Broncos in the playoffs? How many times the Broncos won the Super Bowl? It's a list. It's a list of accomplishments. Yeah. The Rockies, you're like 2007. We were in the World Series.
No, that was easily the longest stretch they'd gone without going to the playoffs since they first made it in 1977.
Yeah.
I think there was when would that have been? It would have been maybe up until 2011. So like 2007 to 2011.
Yeah.
They missed 5.
Yep.
And this time they missed 9. And 5 was also massive compared to any other
The Nuggets were in there for a while. They had a pretty rough stretch. Same with the Avs.
But before that, they had the longest run.
Yeah.
Up until it was like it wasn't 20 in a row. I wonder if I can find
it would have been from, they did miss.
You're talking about the Nuggets?
Yeah, it would have been from like 2005 to.
You're talking about the Nuggets. I don't know. Okay. They're talking about the Broncos. I was about to put math together. But
I'm lost on this one too, man. This is on you. But I remember talking to Harrison about it, and he had said, it had been a while.
Yeah.
Like, playoff droughts happen. Like, that's the way it is. Again, I had talked to Harrison about this before. Like, covering the Nuggets back in the day was the same as covering the Rockies today. Like, it was the joke of the NBA. Nobody cared. And to be completely honest with you, the Broncos have been that in its own context. And again, the history isn't there, but the Broncos for the last decade almost had just this huge question mark of like, what is this organization doing? What's their quarterback? What's their coach? Where are we going? What's the direction we're headed in? And you finally now have an answer to that we can sit here right here in this little tiny studio freezing our asses off and saying the Broncos have a direction that they're headed in and we like the way it's going, right? Couldn't have said that last year. Nuggets have said that the years past.
Nuggets made it 2004 to 2013, which I'm pretty sure was the longest in the NBA when it ended.
Wow.
But again, I was 16 when that was ending, so I could be misremembering.
Same.
I'm pretty sure that was the longest.
Yeah. I know. I'm thinking back to 2015 when the Broncos were in the playoffs last, and I'm thinking back to like we were just saying, the DNVR bar didn't even exist. 2015, man, I was 18 years old. I'm like I was graduating high school in 2015. Such a different world that we were living in.
2.5, 3 years into college at that point.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what I was going to do.
No, of course not. Like, it's just, I mean, and
real quick story about that. I had just disclaimer, did nothing horrible, but I had just been released from jail. And that was past summer for like a week. So looking back at what my life was 10 years ago to now when the Broncos actually created, I had an iPhone 6, I think. at the time were at 16. Like,
Wow.
it's just insane to think about how many things have actually changed in that time.
Yeah, Yaya had gone to jail for breaking into Empower Field and running across the field with his shirt off.
I'm not a Buffs fan with the truck, by the way.
Yeah. I'm going to need more on that story eventually from you. Yeah. You're not going to get away with that one for that long.
The Spurs, by the way, had a longer streak. They had made 16 consecutive at that time.
Yep.
But
Okay.
the Nuggets had the second longest at the time.
Yeah. Interesting.
Good old days.
Yeah, I mean, Jose's bringing us back to 1973. Broncos had 2 straight sub 500 seasons. They just endured 7 losing seasons in a row. Yeah, I mean, that's tough. Sounds like Broncos are going to the Super Bowl
back
again.
to jail.
We
Yeah.
like-
Send Yaya to jail.
I love that. Ryan Green in the Toyota chat. Look, man, whatever it takes. Yaya, you might have to bite the bullet on this one.
I'm not going back.
Did you not like jail?
Oh, it was actually not that bad.
Yeah,
That's kind of what I thought.
because you came out and you're like, oh, the Broncos are in the Super Bowl.
It was a big kindergarten because I did nothing horrible. So it was like a
he
big
says.
kindergarten.
So he says. No one does anything horrible.
ran over
but-
an old lady.
yeah. That was a while ago though, man. 2015. It's been a minute. I had seen earlier too. Crumble Cookies was asking if Bo wins a Super Bowl, will he be bigger in Denver than Jokic? Dude, if Bo Nix wins the Super Bowl, his rookie year with the Denver Broncos, with $90 million in cap space, with the Broncos being a joke in the NFL for the previous at least 3+ years. Give him his crown now. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I don't know if you could say long-term bigger than Nikola Jokic. He's still got more years to figure that one out. But in the moment, absolutely. Biggest celebrity in Denver this year if Bo Nix takes the Broncos to the Super Bowl and wins them.
Yep.
He'd send to God status immediately.
Yeah.
Yep.
Put a statue outside of Empower Field tomorrow if he wins the Super Bowl. I mean, that's just I will say this. I remember when I was back in college at Western State Colorado University, good old Wasted State in the RMAC, Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, with our boy Dre. Although we didn't go in the same years, but same alma mater.
Big difference.
Big difference.
Shout out, Dre.
Yeah, I was going to college during the Austin Eckler days, though. Austin Eckler was on the team when I was calling games for Western right out of the gate. But I remember talking to Coach Baines, as the head coach for the football team, and his slogan, his motto was always just be 1-0, right? Like every game is 1-0. It doesn't matter if you're playing School of Mines, those damn Miners. It doesn't matter if you're playing them or the worst team in the state. You got to be 1-0. And I think that's got to be my motto going into this game against Buffalo. It's an even playing field. Sure, Buffalo's, they're the Bills. They're playing in Buffalo. Like, I get it. It's a tall task for the Denver Broncos. But it's just, you go 1-0. That's all it is.
I mean, you got to be able to look back at last year's game in Buffalo, look back at the Chiefs game this year. There's a lot to look back on that this team.
It's an even playing field.
Absolutely. This team should totally believe they can go in and win this game.
And I loved your guys' point that you were saying, I don't know, was it RK who was talking about it? How, this is a team that's starting their season in the playoffs. Was that RK who said that?
Yeah.
I love that because I'm like, you're right. That it's kind of true. Like the Chiefs, the Bills, I mean, even the Ravens, feel like they're starting their season in the playoffs. So the expectations were there. There was never any doubt that they were going to be in the playoffs. So they're like the Dodgers. The Dodgers aren't. No one's like, oh, what are the Dodgers doing in the regular season? It's like, no, what are the Dodgers doing in the playoffs? Like that's when it begins. So the Broncos have no pressure. You go in there and you're playing with house money. Just got to get 1-0. Take things one step at a time, man. I'm pumped. I'm pumped for Friday.
Cannot wait.
It's gonna be fun. Real quick before we wrap up, I want to ask both of you guys this: favorite memory of the regular season. What was yours?
The first one popped into my mind was Marvin Mims' catch to send it to overtime against the Bengals, but that can't be it because they lost.
That's a specific memory. That's a memory.
The second one
though.
that goes back to is the blocked field goal.
Yeah,
but that's a dark one. No, but I mean, we just that's what comes up because those are kind of the
those are tough
big moments.
How about the Marvin Mims 93-yard touchdown
exactly
from Bo?
what I was
That has
gonna
to be
say.
the
Yeah.
one of the year.
That's a
Come
good
on.
one.
That's what I was going to say.
Pat's pick six.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Marvin Mim ones. Nick Bonito to his pick six was big too.
That's a good one.
Bonito to the Casa. That was the fun one.
The
So
celebration itself that we turned into a shirt,
absolutely.
where he just grabbed the family jewels and went into the touchdown.
The fact that
zone,
DNVR
best.
Broncos shirts are back too. What a vibe. What a vibe.
Yes.
Love it.
We're rolling with the vibes going into 2025. Broncos playoffs coming up here. We're celebrating. Yaya's dropping stuff. Thank God we had Empire today to install our floors so that everything could be damaged and we'll still fix it. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us in the chat. Jake's got to go jump on the Buffs pod, so we're going to peace out here. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Christian, Saez, Jake, Hank, and Yaya. See you next time on TDSP.
We all silly like the mayor.